Hello. Welcome to the second lecture of the ARCHLine.XP 2024 preliminary course, the Living Room Workshop. If you didn't download the projects used during the previous lecture, you can do so on the ARCHLine.XP website under Learn, Courses, Preliminary Course. Let's start the program. I'm starting a new project. First, I'll save the project. I click on the Save icon. I recommend creating a subfolder under Documents, ARCHLine.XP Draw, for example, with the client's name. I'm using a folder named 2024. I enter the project name. In the Foundation Workshop, we learned how to edit floor plans using various tools, and now we'll explore a new possibility. Let's begin planning. I'll use the Interior menu, Room Maker, Predefined Rooms. I choose the rectangle shape. I enter parameter A, which is the width, set to 7,160 mm. Parameter B, which is the depth, is set to 3,900 mm. Wall thickness and wall height can be adjusted. I place it on the floor plan near the origin. The floor plan of the room and the 3D model are ready. Let's move to 3D. As we learned in the previous workshop, I can zoom in or out with the mouse scroll wheel, and double-clicking gives me the optimal zoom level. Right-clicking allows me to look around the model. Let's check the PDF to see exactly what floor plan we want to create. We already have the base of this rectangle. First, we'll create these two wall add-ons. I select Building, Wall, Edit, Insert Square Add-on. It can also be graphically specified on the floor plan, but I'll manually enter its values, 3,000 mm wide and 2,240 mm deep. I place it on the corner. If the cursor does not touch the wall, the exclamation mark appears. So now it can't be placed. Thus I touch the wall with the cursor, and click on the corner of it. The first wall add-on is done. I will continue with the second wall add-on. I choose Wall, Edit, Insert Square Add-on. I also give the dimensions of this one, 1,400 mm and 500 mm. You saw on the PDF that this angle is not at the corner, but 1,400 mm from the corner of the wall. I will place the wall add-on with its reference point. The reference point is marked by the little green pencil. With the instruction Next Reference you can switch between the left, the middle and the right reference point. I will keep the left reference point. Now I enter the distance, 1,400 mm. The walls are finished. The next step is to place the slab. First, I set the slab property. In the building, we find Slab menu. The relative height of the wall is 0. I give the base offset from the floor, which is also 0. I want to place the slab under the wall, so I give its thickness with a minus sign, minus 300 mm. The contour of the slab can be defined in sketch mode, for example for a balcony, or by the walls. Here I will create the slab by walls. To do this, I use a selection rectangle to select the entire building. Then I will press Enter to close the selection. The slab is finished. Let's see it in 3D. We can also hide the dashboard, so these menus will only appear when I hover over them with the mouse. But I'll reset this now. Let's go back to the floor plan. Next step is to prepare the ceiling. I'm going to make a plain ceiling, but first I set its properties. Its thickness is 20 mm. I can set its material and enter the relative height, which is now 2,680 mm. This is not a real plain ceiling, it's more like a plaster. 20 mm thick plaster will be on the reinforced concrete slab. The representation should be top view, so we won't see the false ceiling marking on the floor plan. I start creating the false ceiling. I choose Ceiling, Plane Auto Ceiling command. Simply clicking into the room recognizes the room's contour, and the full ceiling is done. The next point is setting the perspective. Let's go to 3D view, and on the dashboard, by clicking on the eye icon, we reach perspective setting. Clicking on the 2D view icon will activate the ground floor plan. I zoom in with Fit to View button to the floor plan. If I click on the little red marker, I can move it into the room. If I click on the blue one, I can move the camera. If I click on the purple one, I can move the object, and if I click on the green one, I can change the perspective. Make sure that the angle of view is between 60 and 70 degrees, and not significantly more, because it will distort the perspective. Another thing to remember, when setting the perspective, is that the height of the camera and the target should be the same. 1200 mm is recommended, but it should not be higher than 1400 mm. If they are not at the same height, the walls will slope. Only deviate from this rule if you have a good reason to do so, for example to show off a narrow bathroom from above. When you set a suitable perspective, click on the green plus to save it. Go on, let's specify several views of the room, for example clockwise. Rename them by double-clicking on their names. Below we see the views. If I click on the blue arrow next to it, I can see the perspective in a row. That's why the order was important, so that you're not jumping between perspectives, but looking around the room. There's also an option for quick perspective setup. Using the icon on the floor plan, you'll see exactly what the camera sees, as if standing at that point where you placed the icon. The next step is to use the Room Maker. Clicking on the interior, Room Maker command and click inside the room. The Room Maker will appear. The advantage of this compact method is that anyone new to ARCHLine.XP can quickly get to the stage of decorating a room. All you need to do is to use these tools, one after the other. Let's start with placing doors. Let's place a double-sided sliding door. If I step back, I can select the category. It should be the sliding door, and from the sliding door, I'll choose the double-sided sliding door. I enter its parameters, 3140 mm wide and 2400 mm high. I use the little arrows and the floor plan to choose which wall I want to place it on. We always work on the wall directly opposite us. I want to place the door on the long wall. I place it with the green check mark. The program places it in the center of the wall. After that, I can adjust its position by specifying the left or right distance. If I want to fit it into the right corner, I enter 0 here. After refreshing, I see the result. Let's place another sliding door on the opposite wall. I navigate with the arrows, change its width to 3000 mm, and place it with the green check mark. We're done. The next step is placing windows, so let's move on to the second menu. We'll place a simple window. It immediately appears for me, but if I don't see it, I can easily find it in the library. I enter its parameters, width 2000 mm, height 2100 mm, sill height 300 mm. I want to place this window on one of the vertical wall segments, so I find it and press the green check mark. I adjust the left distance to 800 mm, so that an 1100 mm wide window fits next to it. I modify it by clicking the Update button. If I want to place multiple openings on a wall, I can do so by clicking the green plus. Its width is 1100 mm, and the other parameters are the same. I create it with the green check mark. I move to the right-hand wall with the wall locator. Here, I place a 1200 mm window. I fit it to the left corner of the wall. I'm done placing the windows. The next point is placing curtains on the windows. I use the wall selector to go back to the previous wall. The active window is the one with the red frame around it. I can switch between the windows by clicking on it, or by clicking on the blue arrows. The first window should be active. First, I specify the type of curtain I want. This time I choose the fourth option. I set the pleats to 60, and set the retraction in the middle to 0. I can choose whether I want to place it with, or without pelmet. Now, I'm choosing without pelmet. I need to specify the top and bottom height of the curtain. The top is 2680 mm, and the bottom is 20 mm. I also need to specify the material. I'm looking for curtain 002. I place it with the green check mark. I move to the other wall, and place the same curtain on the window there. Now let's see how I can select and download another material. I go back to the curtain I created at the first window. For this step, we will need an internet connection. I click on ARCHLine Warehouse, then within the Brands and Materials category, I search for Rovertex, and then the Montreal material. When I click to download, the item not only downloads and saves to the material library, but also applies to the curtain. Incidentally, we also have the option to download materials from the manufacturer's websites and add them to the program. I open the browser and visit the Sanderson manufacturer's website. Clicking on the search bar, I look for the Icaria evergreen material. I right-click on the texture. I have several options. I can save it as a JPG image. I can edit this image as needed. The other option is to ask for a copy of the image. I recommend this if there is no need to edit the image. In this case, the image will be copied on the clipboard. I go back to the ARCHLine.XP program. To create a new material, I click on the yellow star. The Material Properties window will appear. I will create the new material from texture. I right-click on the color pattern on the left. Paste will insert the material from the clipboard, while the texture option on the right will be turned on. So, the default color is replaced with the texture. If the texture is saved as a JPG image, I can browse it out of the computer. We need to set the render style for the material. It's a blackout curtain, so I choose the fabric render style. I will talk more about render styles in the rendering workshop. I also need to adjust the physical properties of the fabric. It would be best if this pattern would be a seamless pattern, of which actual physical size is known. Unfortunately, frequently the pattern is not a seamless pattern, so it needs to be edited. For a neutral pattern like this, I can use stretch command, and the program will simply stretch it onto the curtain piece. This is what I do now. I accept with OK, and save it under the name Icaria Evergreen in the Fabrics, Curtains category, and specify the manufacturer. The curtain material has been replaced with the new Sanderson material. I will switch to the other wall, and choose the Icaria material for the curtains there too. I go to the next tab, the Electrical Accessories. I can choose an electrical accessory from the library, or from the showroom. I recommend Logus, or Schneider Electric Accessories. In this example, I will first select a 1-gang light switch. I will place it next to the balcony door. The offset from the floor is 1200 mm. In this case, I group 3 horizontally switches. The switches will be placed in the middle of the wall. If the exact distance is known, it can be entered, or if it is not, I can set it with manual move buttons. I place sockets under it. Do you remember? On the same wall I put another element with the green plus icon. Now I'll go back to the Socket Outlets category, and select the 1-gang standard socket with 3 horizontal grouping. I set the base offset to 400 mm, and place it with a green tick. I move it a little bit. The next tool is Profiles. I can place a decorative profile in the middle, or where the wall meets the ceiling, or a parquet profile below. Let's start with the profile on the top first. Choose PX022 from the library. The width and height is equally 50 mm. Its relative height is 2680 mm. I create it with the green check mark. I still need to set its material, which will be light gray. I can select it from the favorites if it's already there, or if not, I can find the material in the library by clicking the blue plus. To search, I need to go back to the main materials library. Here, I enter the first few characters of the material name. I found it, so I will use this. The next step is to create the baseboard, for which I choose the skirting board 006 profile, with dimensions of 20 mm and 150 mm, and I choose the same material. The baseboards are done. Let's move on to placing the wall lights. I navigate to the opposite wall. We will place 2 wall lights here. If the desired item is not in the favorites library, I click the blue plus here as well, and select the wall lamp named light. The left distance is 500 mm, and the relative height is 1500 mm. I create it with the green check mark. Since I want to place 2, I click the green plus. The program placed it in the same location as the previous one. I set the right distance to 500 mm. I create it with the Create button. We are done with this. Let's move on. The next tool is Picture on Wall. It can be used to place different paintings, photos with or without a frame, or matting. Here we put a map of London as a poster. I go to the library and look for the map again in the main library. Since I want to put it up as a poster, I have to turn off the frame and the matting. The base offset from the floor is 150 mm. I set the size to 2450 mm. I keep the aspect ratio, so the other value will change proportionally. The map on the wall is ready. It's in the middle, we don't need to adjust it. Let's move on. I'm going to put another picture on the wall add-on. I have to find the wall first. I will look for the picture, Arunus. I will add frame to it, and keep the size. The height is 1200 mm. I place the picture. I give material for the frame, it should be bronze black. It's done. Let's look at the next tool. This is the floor finish. Here I can choose different types of parquet. I find the car's oak truffle material. I can also set the direction of it. Rotating it by 90 degrees, it will look like this. I'll go back to the original. I move on to the wall finish. This is the wall that I've just chosen, and I'm going to select its material. From the library, I will pick the same light grey that I used for the skirting board. Then the wall I had selected would pick up the color. Now I want all the walls to be the same color. I select on all walls, then choose light grey. All the walls are colored. Now I'm going to change the color of this wall. I turn off the All Walls option and select Black Blue 95 color. I'll go to the wall where the map is, and paint it to the same color. And we are finished working with the Room Maker. I close the Room Maker, and save the project. Now we will place a ceiling light from the Design Center. From the Elements, Lighting, Pendant Lights category, I place this Delta Light pendant lamp. I click, set its base offset from the floor to 2030 mm. I accept with Enter, then use drag and drop to place it on the floor plan. I exit the command with Escape. Let's place a spotlight that we will duplicate. From the Design Center, I choose the Grid in 2 rails spotlight from the Lighting, Spotlights category. Its base offset from the floor is 2600 mm. I place it near the wall light. I want to show how to set the distance from the wall for the spotlight. I select the wall, then with Control key, the spotlight, so the program shows the wall in red, and the spotlight in blue. This means the element highlighted in red stays in place, and the blue one moves relative to the other. I can also change this by clicking on the little arrowhead. I revert to the previous setting, and then enter the desired distance, 1400 mm. As I mentioned, I want to duplicate this. I select the object, then under Edit, Duplicate, Matrix, I specify the copy origin. Then I can specify graphically or with a value, how I want to offset these from each other. Now I choose the value. The number of horizontal elements is 3, and the number of vertical elements is 2. The horizontal shift, which means the distance between elements, is 1500 mm, and the vertical shift is -800 mm. I accept and drag my mouse to the right. The spotlights are done. In the following we will edit the length and width of the curtains. I'll click on the end point of the curtain, and insert it into the corner by length changing. I will also modify the curtain on the other side. I will do the same with the other curtain as well. I want to show you an interesting edit, covering the top of the curtain, with a decorative molding. Let's see how I would edit this. I click on the molding. I have to make sure that I click on the top one, and not the bottom. The one with the relative height of 2680 mm should be selected. I click on the blue line, and offset it by 150 mm. The curtain will fit behind this nicely. What do I do on the other side? The previous one would not be a good solution, because it would highlight the molding. In this case I can insert a new node here, and shift this side by 150 mm. I'm done. So, I can hide the curtain behind the molding. The hidden curtain pelmet is now ready. Now let's see how we can replace materials in 3D. I will change the color of the windows to black. I'll pick a black color from the library. I drag and drop it onto the window, but I don't change it as tiling, I replace the material. I can replace the material of just this one element, or all the elements with this color. I choose the replacing one material with another command, so the program changes all such materials in the project. Now I specify a surface with the material I want to modify. In this case, it changes the material not only of the windows, but also of the doors. In the next step, I will create a corner window. I switch to the floor plan, and select the building, window, windows on wall corner, join two opening on wall corner command. I need to select the two windows I want to convert into a corner window. The program immediately makes this modification. It pushes the windows to the corner point, so I need to adjust the width of this window. I select the window, then click on its square marker to modify the size. I choose which side to modify, and drag the mouse to the other window, then click. We are done. We have one more thing to do. We can see that the color of the wall here at the window recess is not right. We managed to repaint all the walls in one step in the Room Maker, but we have to take care of painting these recesses. Let's bring the 3D window over here. I will paint the missing areas with the same color as the wall. I right-click on the wall, then select Find Material. The material used on the wall is displayed in the Design Center. I drag this material onto the white surfaces, using the As Painting option. Next, we will place objects. I go back to the floor plan, then we will search for some objects from the Design Center. First I place the husk sofa from the elements. I drag it from the library to the floor plan, and place it. Next will be the cafe tables, named Messina 2 and Messina 3. Now come the Puff 001. I can rotate the object by clicking on the rotation icons, depending on the position I want to place it in. I place a sideboard under the TV, and a rug. Next is a bow concept table and chair 001 chairs. I can immediately rotate the chairs as well, so they are placed in the correct position. Let's position the elements correctly. Rotate the sofa by 180 degrees. We can choose free rotation, or specify the exact angle. I rotate the coffee table slightly with free rotation. I also want to position the sofa 100 mm from the wall, so I press Ctrl key, and select both the wall and the sofa, then enter the distance. There are several ways to resize objects. We can edit the dimensions on the floor plan, or graphically change the size by clicking the arrow end. In the Properties menu, we can also modify the dimensions, and by clicking on the pencil, we can adjust these sizes. If the Uniform Scaling Operation option is on, and I change one value, the program will proportionally increase or decrease all other values. Let's see how we can place models in 3D. I search for a candle in the Design Center. I drag it onto the table, and select the Object Placement option. The program recognizes the surfaces, so we can easily place objects on any surface, without setting the base offset from the floor plan separately. Let's save the project, and open the already completed project. If you have installed the Preliminary Workshop installer, you will find the files in the Preliminary Course, Living Room folder. The 3D view should be active. On the dashboard, I want to show the difference between consistent color mode and realistic representation. Currently, consistent color mode is selected, but if I switch to realistic representation, we can see that reflections also appear on some materials, so it is worth using this. Let's set a perspective from the center of the room. Click on the eye icon to save a new view and name it. Now I will show you how to look around the space. Select the View menu, Animation, Walk, and Fly, Look Around option. You can exit by pressing Escape. Now let's see how we can enable shadows. First, we need to set the sun position. Select View, Sun Position command. Set the location to Budapest, and the date and time to March 22, 9:21 a.m. The north direction can also be adjusted, but we will leave it as it is. Accept with OK. Turn on the shading. On the dashboard, select the Display Shadows command, and you can see the shadow cast by the sun position we just set. In the sun, and shadow simulation, you can modify these shadows on the model using the sliders. This is also possible on the dashboard. You can also create a shadow animation by specifying the time interval. This can be found in the View, Shadow Animation command. Enter the date, the interval, and the step interval, that is, how many minutes between each frame in the animation. Clicking Preview shows a short video that demonstrates the effect of the sun's movement on our model. Let's move on to our last topic for today, which is rendering. Click on the rendering icon to start a standalone rendering and see what settings it has. I will talk more about rendering in the rendering workshop, but it is important to know that to create a good photorealistic image, at least 20 25 test renders are needed. Rendering itself is a long process to achieve the desired result. It is worth rendering first in low resolution with a smaller render preset. Now I choose a 1280 by 720 resolution and a Q1 quick preview image render preset. I don't want to enable artificial lights now. For sunlight, I choose a cloudy daylight, and for the background, the city with a cloudy sky image. For background brightness, I select 100, which is needed for brighter daytime scenes. I start the rendering. The program then generates the model, and we will see the rendering process in a separate window. Once the render is finished, adjust as needed based on the result, and start additional test renders. For the final image, use the Q2 or QX render preset, and a higher resolution. Adjusting the effects further improves the image. Rendering time will be longer at this point. As I mentioned, we will go through these steps in more detail in the rendering course. This brings us to the end of today's workshop. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope to see you in the next lecture. Have a nice day. Goodbye.